Hi, this is Pastor Page. You're listening to TV Confidential.
A reminder that Hal Eisner will join us in our second hour. We hope you stay tuned for that in the meantime. And since we have a few minutes left this segment, we're going to turn back the clock and bring you a clip from a conversation that originally aired in January 2012 with our friend Larry Brody. Larry Brody, award-winning television writer, producer, a man who created, produced, or wrote for such series as Diagnosis Murder, Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek The Next Generation, The Fall Guy, Mike Hammer, Police Story, Barnaby Jones, and The Streets of San Francisco. Larry Brody, also the author of several books about the television industry, including Turning Points in Television and Television from the Inside Out. He also runs TVWriter.com, an excellent resource not only for new writers, but also experienced writers of television. As we pick up the conversation, Larry and I are talking about the frenetic pace of writing and producing episodic television at the time he began his career in the early 1970s. I don't know whether you worked directly with Quinn Martin, but I know that you worked on a lot of Quinn Martin productions, and he had he had a line that also holds true, which is describing the writing and producing a weekly series, whether it's 26 episodes, 30 episodes, however long the order is. He says, you always try to make them as good as possible, but you're going to have, and if you do 25 shows, you're going to have maybe 10 good shows, 10 okay shows, and 5 shows, that you produce because you have to fulfill the order. And it's a little strange to hear it from that, but when you're doing it, on a week in, week out basis, and especially television being such a factory basis thing, I mean, you just do the best you can in the time that's allowed you.
Television was so different then. I mean, now guys take hiatuses to catch up. And this didn't turn out so well, we're going to regroup, and we'll put out production, and the audience won't care because we'll come back after 3 weeks off and we'll have a great show. And we couldn't stop. We could never stop. I was on a show, I guess it was the 70s. It was called Gibbsville. It was a fantastic, wonderful show. It was canceled after 3 episodes, and we still couldn't stop because there was a European by.
Yeah.
And we had to work without ever taking one single day off or delaying anything, even though no one in the United States was ever going to see the episodes we were doing.
I mean, I remember that very briefly. Gig Young was in that, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine it's a double-edged sword because you're not going to get the play in the U.S., but you still, at least you're still working and you're fulfilling, whether it's a 13-week run or a full 22. At least you're working. At least someone's going to watch it, overseas at some point.
I don't know. That was a period of my life where I was working at Columbia. I went from show to show, starting as a freelancer, and then a story editor, and then a producer. And there was always something, and they were all things that had the great promise that they never fulfilled because of inter-office politics.
Well, that is certainly the vicissitudes of writing and producing for television, which you capture not only on your website TVWriter.com, but also your books such as Television Writing from the Inside Out, which you can order at Larry's website TVWriter.com. Larry, you and I have corresponded over the years through Facebook, but one of the reasons why I finally got around to getting you on the program is you made a very interesting comment a couple of months ago with regard to House and Hugh Laurie's character on House. Now, most of us see House as a modern-day Sherlock Holmes. You had a much different take on House in that you say House is really sort of an inside look at how television works and how.
Oh, right. Yes, it is. House is exactly if you've done TV and you watch House, you just see the entire show is the parallel to running a staff. House is the showrunner. The other doctors are the writing staff. Nurses and things who very seldom, enter into the situation are the crew, who showrunners usually try to stay as far away from as possible. Cuddy was the head of the studio, or possibly the network liaison, and all of House's interests, all of his little personal things that are going on are to me showbiz things. I mean, wasn't there an episode where House house was all upset because he didn't like his parking space. The first conflict anyone gets into when they have a good studio job is the parking space conflict.
Yeah.
It's all about that. And then the rest of it just falls into place. The constant, the whole idea that he can't just cure people, but that he has to fight a battle in order to cure them his way is, of course, the whole way that we work when we produce a series.
Right, because, television is the producer's medium. The show has to reflect, the vision of the one person, whether it's Quinn Martin, whether it's David Gerber, whether it's Glenn Larson, whether it's Roy Huggins. And
yes, you mentioned all my friends. I think I like one of those.
Which one?
I worked for all of them. They hire, someone once said, well, what they do to writers in the business is they tell you they can't make the project without you, and they need you, and then they make you an insulting offer. And in TV, it goes farther than that. It's like we need your touch, your view, your way of looking at the universe and expressing it and writing it, or else we can't make this show work. And you go, wow, great. And then you spend the entire time that the show is on the air fighting for your view as against theirs. And that's House.
Yeah, that is House, and this is Larry Brody. Larry Brody, award-winning television writer and producer. Our conversation with Larry originally aired in January 2012. Take a quick time out. We'll play more of our conversation with Larry when we come back here on TV Confidential.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
Ed Robertson, thanking you for listening to the TV Confidential podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit the subscribe button so that you won't miss our next episode.
Hi, this is Lee Merriweather, and you're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson with a reminder that Hal Eisner will join us at the top of the hour. Hal Eisner, the multiple award-winning broadcast journalist who covered the news every day for 58 years, including 15 years at various radio stations in Texas and Louisiana, and the last 43 years on television in Los Angeles, first as a reporter for the LA Bureau of CNN, then primarily as a field reporter for Fox 11. Hal Eisner will join us at the top of the hour. We hope you stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we're rounding out our first hour by playing a clip from a conversation that originally aired in January 2012 with our friend Larry Brody. Larry Brody, award-winning writer and producer. Larry's credits in television include such shows as Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek The Next Generation, Police Story, Barnaby Jones, and The Streets of San Francisco. Larry's books on television include Television Writing from the Inside Out and Turning Points in Television. For more information on Larry's books and Larry's career in television, go to tvwriter.com, www.tvwriter.com. Let's see.
Just call Larry Brody, because Larry loves talking about himself.
I have a feeling if I gave your number out on the air, you'd never speak to me again. But
I think that's true. Although I never answer my phone, it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, in that case. Let's see. In one important respect, the industry is very different today than it was when you broke in the 60s and 70s, and that there are a lot more opportunities for a freelance writer to make his way into television, whereas, today the opportunities of freelance, are pretty much gone.
Yeah, I think it's very sad because it means fewer people earn a better living. And I feel sorry for the people who can't earn one. I came in, I have to correct you because, and it's kind of humiliating, I'm even older than you said. I started in the 60s. And that's like a whole other world, the 60s world. But I was a kid, I was just out of school, and basically I'd written the only spec script I've ever written, and I had an agent because I was already doing a lot of science fiction short stories and things, and doing pretty well at that, but you couldn't make a living at it, at 2 cents a word. And my agent sent it to an agent at William Morris. I came out to talk to her, and she said, well, this is pretty good. I think I can sell you as easily as I can sell any of my clients. I took that as really positive, not realizing how hard it was for her to sell any of her clients.
Yeah.
But she specialized in new people, and so I came, fully developed with an agent, and really immediately went to work. Got very lucky. But it was all about the fact that it was because it was a freelance business. They did, I think the 30-plus episode season had just gone away, but it was still the 26-episode season.
Right.
And there was a producer who was not a writer on every show, and he was just a producer, and he ran things. He would have been a showrunner now, including creatively as well as everything else. There was one story editor on each show, and there were, look at this, 26 episodes that they had to find writers for, and they were always thinking in terms of 26 different writers. But if someone did well, they got to write 2 or 3, or at the most, maybe 4 episodes of one show. It was kind of a golden age of employment.
It was a golden age of employment, but it takes a certain mindset for a freelancer to break in, because you know that on the one hand there are opportunities, because back then it was impossible for any 1 or 2 people to write and produce 26 episodes. But at the same time, you have to be prepared for the fact that once you turn in the script, even if you've got even if the story is good, you've got all the points, it's going to go through 1 or 2 other typewriters.
Yeah, it definitely had to, but the mindset was weird. I didn't have this mindset, but I remember being at Hawaii Five-0 one day waiting for my meeting on something I had written, and a guy came in, and he said, I heard that my script's been published, meaning that it had come out of Mimeo.
Yeah.
And was sitting there with covers because they were really going to shoot it. And the secretary who was sitting there, yes, there were secretaries then and not assistants, said, oh, yeah. He said, well, is it rewritten, or did they just change the dialogue? And I thought that the dialogue is what it was all about. Rewriting was when they changed your dialogue, but, not to this guy.
Larry, we were talking before we started recording about some of the work you did with Quinn Martin Productions. I mean, you wrote for Barnaby Jones, you wrote for Streets of San Francisco,
Canon,
and you wrote for Canon. Now again, that was another production company where it was very, very friendly to freelance writers. At least in terms there are opportunities for freelance writers.
It was an interesting environment. It was very friendly in general. And you had asked me before we started, or whether I knew Quinn, if I had any stories about Quinn. And the answer really is that I worked as a freelancer and turned down several staff jobs as a producer with Quinn for about a decade and never once met him.
Well, that experience is not unusual from what I know about Quinn, is that once he hired you, or once he hired people like Phil Saltzman or William Robert Yates or whoever he put in charge of the show, he stayed out of the way and let them do their job.
Because, well, he gave them there was a middleman, whose name I have conveniently forgotten, who sort of ran things for Quinn, and he was the one who gave notes. Didn't give notes.
Would that be
meetings with Bill Yates or with Phil Saltzman, and they'd say, "What's his name says?"
Would that be Artie Fellows?
Yeah.
Arthur Fellows. Yeah, he was.
Arthur Fellows. There's another one before him, but I don't remember that one. But then Artie replaced him, and Artie Fellows was an interesting guy. I did meet, and he is the reason that all Quinn Martin shows started with an exterior shot, and that every scene change began with the exterior of the building and moved in. Because Artie was basically the head film editor, and he supervised the editing of every single episode, and after a while he didn't read the scripts or know what they were about, and in order to orient him, the editors had to put in establishing shots. So he could find his way through their pieces, because he was seeing so many every day. And that became the Quinn Martin trademark, the establishing shot.
The establishing shot, and then, of course, the strong characters, whether it was William Conrad as Cannon or Carl Malden in Streets of San Francisco. And I would I would imagine, I would think, writing episodic television, especially coming in, more or less in the middle of the show, which I know is the case when you started writing for Streets. On the one hand, I would imagine it helps to know who the characters are so you can think in terms of that, but on the other hand, it could also be a challenge. What was your experience like?
Well, see, but they had it down. They had such a system set up so well that you didn't have to worry about the challenge. Phil Saltzman was the most organized producer, I think, in the history of certainly of television, if not of every medium. And it was like you went in, you pitched your idea, they said yes, and then there were a series of meetings which could take, well, maybe as little as one day and as long as a week of constantly meeting, in which Phil, the story editor, and the writer worked out every beat of the story, which the writer then simply went home as a secretary and wrote it down before it went any further. And then that was approved. And it was really a godsend because you knew exactly where you were going at all times. You knew that everyone you were working with was on the same page as you. They had led you through it. And now you could write a script.
We're talking about some of the personalities in television that you worked with. You know, Gerber being one. I know you worked with Huggins briefly.
Yeah, Huggins fired me from Beretta, but of course he said I quit. To save my face, it was to save them a ton of money.
My point is, both Huggins and Gerber very strong personalities, and I know talking to writers on both sides of the equation, you either liked the experience or you didn't. But
did you ever meet someone who liked Roy Huggins?
Yeah.
A writer who enjoyed, other than Steve Cannell?
Yeah, I have interviewed a couple in the course of my career.
Amazing.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I brought up Roy's name and Gerber's name as a contrast to Phil Saltzman, on the other hand, I mean, there is no question he was in charge, but he was a very low-key type of person, which shows there are different ways to get things done in television.
He was, I really liked him. As I got better and moved on, I would still come back and work for him on things, but it became harder because once I had produced things, I couldn't just write for Phil because his perfectly organized way was like counterintuitive. It didn't allow for those great sparks of flights of fancy when it's 3 a.m. and you're writing something. You had to stay to the plan no matter what.
Yeah.
In the long run, it worked brilliantly.
Award-winning television writer-producer Larry Brody from a conversation that originally aired in January 2012. Larry Brody runs TVWriter.com, an excellent resource not only for new writers, but also experienced writers of television. TVWriter.com. Don Eisner will join us when we come back for hour number 2 of TV Confidential. Please stay with us.
If you've got an ED problem, now you can get generic or herbal blue pills for as little as $2 a pill from Steelman Pills.
800-932-2613, 800-932-2613.